Okay, welcome guys. Today with us we have Marc Santos, former coach of Vancouver Whitecaps and current assistant coach for LAFC. We're a fantastic season coach. LAFC won the MLS. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Enjoying still what we did this season, but now, having time to relax a little bit home.
Okay. Um, Talking about the LAFC, how was the arrival of Gareth Bale and Giorgio Chiellini to the other players and to the coaching staff? Players, both of them won almost everything in Europe.
Well, the first thing that really impacted all of us is how committed they were still for winning. And I think the best images in that is the celebration of Garrett when he ties the game against Philadelphia, and even the celebrations of Chiellini being on the bench and just jumping out of the bench when we won the penalty shootouts. I think those two moments demonstrate very well that they came here committed to try to win another trophy in their impressive career. Of course, they both came in moments of their career that was more towards the end, right? So we cannot say that we got these players at their peak, but what they did bring is everyday commitment and everyday how they carried themselves in the club, how they speak with the younger players, how they stress everybody to become better, and that has no price in a club in MLS.
That's right. When the season started, your goal was win the MLS, or you guys just exceeded the expectations?
I think LAFC, every time they're in a competition, they want to go to win, and our goal was to do the best that we could, and the best that we could is step by step. The first step was getting back into the playoffs. That's something that we didn't do the previous year in 2021. So that was step number one. Step number two, try to guarantee playoff games home. And the only way you do that is by finishing as high as you can in the standings. But then when there was 5-6 games left, and we saw ourselves fighting for the supporter shield, then that supporter shield became an objective. When we obtained that objective of winning the supporter shield and knowing that our 3 playoff games would be in LA at the Bank of California, then MLS Cup became the objective. So I think we did it really step by step. I would be lying if I tell you that from day one, we said we want to win MLS Cup. Of course, we had that dream, but that dream, we went building it throughout the season. Because if you ask any team in MLS, the 26 teams, or the 28 teams, sorry, they all going to answer you, win MLS Cup, But that dream has to be feeded with the months and when you start feeling that you're reaching certain objectives.
That's right. One of the players that I follow on your team is Jose Cifuentes. Do you believe he can reach the level, for example, Tyler Adams level, and play in the Premier League?
I think Sifu has the talent for that, but what we talk with him every time is he has to find the consistency, because Cifuentes, sometimes I joke with him. I say, hey, who's the player that played in the first half and who's the player that played in the second half? Because I know the player of the second half. I don't know the player of the first half. Sometimes it could be from 1 to 10. If 10 is top, he could be a 2 and then suddenly he's a 9, and Cifuentes has that talent in him. And what I think the next step for him, if he wants to reach a high league, go to a club, an important club in Europe, would be to really find the consistency. Instead of being a 2 and a 9, try to always be that 7.5 every time, and he has it in him. He has that talent, he has that volume, he has that profile. But now for him, it's just a question of consistency. And that's what Tyler Adams has, right? Tyler Adams is a very consistent player, not a flashy player, not a player that has this flash of last pass or goal, but he's very consistent in what he does. And I think that's what Sifu has to look for moving forward.
Yeah, that's right. The FIFA World Cup is almost done. How do you evaluate Canada, USA, and Portugal?
Uh, very different, right? Canada is in their first ever World Cup since 1986 in an incredibly difficult group. I do think Belgium was overrated. Belgium arrived in a World Cup not doing well, and they arrived in the World Cup where this generation was in their way down, but it was still Belgium. Croatia arrived in the semifinal. Morocco arrived in the semifinal, knocking out Spain, knocking out Portugal. So there's no doubt that for the welcome back Canada to the World Cup, the group was extremely challenging, extremely challenging. I think throughout the group, although they lost the 3 games, they showed moments that were very interesting. The 90 minutes against Belgium, the 45 minutes, that second half against Morocco, the way they started the game against Croatia. If they take that as an experience building out towards 2026, it's going to be another stepping stone for Canada. The US, I think, first objective was to qualify from the group. That was mission accomplished. But it's a young team. It's a young team. So what I think people don't see in this US yet is the American culture is win-win-win, and that is very honorable. But it was not easy to win the World Cup with the current roster of the US.
Sure.
But what's very encouraging is they're a young team, a lot of young players, a lot of players for the future. And I think what they built in Qatar could be very interesting going towards the World Cup that is going to be home. Portugal, I think overall, mission accomplished, passing first in the group. I think that was the first objective. Then they made us really dream and believe, everybody that is Portuguese, with that game against Switzerland. And then I wouldn't say that they played a bad game against Morocco. It was a game that they were all over Morocco the full 90 minutes, but they never find solutions to break them down. They didn't create at the end a lot of big chances. There's that crossbar from Bruno Fernandes. There's that header from Pepe at the end that was a big chance. Overall, not big chances. There's this half chance with Cristiano Ronaldo also. But I think Portugal was better than Morocco. But in football, you need the little bit of factor of luck. Morocco, in overtime, there's a play where it's Sarabia, it's the post. If he scores, Morocco are out there. Then they ain't gone against Portugal. So you need a little bit of that factor that Morocco had. Now, the positive thing with Portugal is, again, what we spoke with the United States. I think Portugal can be in the top 4 teams in the next World Cup. When you think about Costa, when you think Dalot, Antonio Silva, Ruben Dias, Nuno Mendes, Ivo Vieira, Vitinha, Rafael Leão, João Felix, Diogo Jota, even, you're talking about a big lack
good players
of future that are very good. And even when you look at the U20, U19, and U17, they were just voted by UEFA, I think, in the best development country in the last 4 years in UEFA. So the future is very bright. There is a big future after Ronaldo, but unfortunately, Portugal arrived in the World Cup with too much focus on Ronaldo, focus on the interview. I think they arrived at this World Cup way too distracted, unfortunately. And that was the difference between getting knocked out in the quarterfinal or arriving in the semifinal. In my opinion, Portugal could have arrived in the semifinal, even with all this soap opera around them, in an easy way. They had enough talent to arrive easily to at least the semifinal. Then, if you get knocked out by France or Brazil or Argentina, okay, they're big teams, you know, but Portugal deserved to be at least in the top four.
Yes, that's right. I want to know your opinion about two players from Canada. Johnston, who signed for Celtic Glasgow, and
Yeah.
Ismail Kone, who also is on his way to Watford.
Yeah, I think both players are still in development type of players. Alistair Johnson had very good moments, very good moments. He struggled, I think, in the game against Croatia, but the way this kid has grown from League One Ontario, then to college, being drafted by Nashville, not as their top pick, and then just fighting and grinding his way in, having an incredible season with Nashville, incredible season with Montreal, and now becoming a solid player for Canada. I think this next move of going to Celtic is the next step he needs in his career, and an important one. Kone is an incredible story of grind, of not accepting people saying no to him. The kid, I think he tried out 3 or 4 times for Montreal. You're talking about a kid that tried out more than 3 times with Montreal, and then going to his youth club, playing in an amateur semi-professional league, and then having another shot at the reserve team of Montreal. Finally, one year ago, if you would speak with Kone about being in a World Cup, he would have told you, you're crazy, that's impossible. So what he went through, it shows a lot of determination and proud and work ethic from Kone. Of course, there's one season. This season he was very good with Montreal. Now Watford, I think it's going to be his big step. It's going to be his big next step to see how he could grow as a player. I'm very interested to follow how he's going to do.
What is the justification for the enormous evolution of the soccer in Canada?
I think number one, MLS. You know, MLS 10 years ago, with more than 10 years ago with Toronto, but then Vancouver, Montreal. Now you were giving players that had maybe no entry in Europe, players that were playing in the USL and second division of North America, Canadian players that were not able to showcase themselves in the highest level possible. Now they're able to get into MLS teams and start slowly to showcase themselves. From there, going into American MLS teams, from there to Europe, and then the last 10 years with MLS, helping a lot the development. I think these players start to get more exposure, and there's no doubt that helped those players. Now with the CPL, the Canadian Premier League, it's a second layer, second tier of opportunity for other players that maybe fell through the cracks, weren't able to get into the MLS right away. But you have the story of Waterman, that it was in Calgary in the CPL, transferred to Montreal, and was also in the roster in the World Cup. So all of that is just gonna help develop better players and make players grow. And now even clubs in Europe, if 20 years ago you would be in Europe talking about Canadian players, they won't listen to you that much. And now when you say, look, there's this Canadian player, they think right away, oh, Davies, Johnston, Stephen Eustachio, Stephen Vittoria, Jonathan David, Tesh Buchanan. Now they say, oh, maybe this player they're talking to me about could be another guy like that. So it's only going to open more and more doors and make the country better, in my opinion.
That's right. You work a few years in Brazil with young teams. For example, you won a Brazilian Cup with Palmeiras. How was it in Brazil?
Brazil, I say a lot. I'd say a lot to a lot of friends. You know, like we won now the MLS Cup. I didn't cry. I did when we won the NASL with San Francisco. I didn't cry when we won the USL with Montreal. I didn't cry. Look, emotionally, when you win as a coach, sometimes tears come through your face or that, you know. But in Brazil, even if it was the youth Brazilian championship, it's the only one I actually cried, you know, and I never felt that before. And the reason is the pressure. The first thing I'm going to tell you about Brazil, the first thing that comes to my mind is the pressure on foreign coaches. And when I was there in 2012, it was like a little bit announcing that maybe one day there would be foreign coaches, because in 2012, there was no foreign coaches in Brazil. And now I think 7 or 8
Seven,
are going to be
Portuguese coach.
Portuguese, a couple of Argentinians. But when I was there in 2012, I was at the youth level, but even in the first teams, they were all Brazilians. But the pressure is to win. And I felt extra pressure because I was at Palmeiras. I was taking the place of a Brazilian coach. That's how they saw it, many of them. And I came from Canada. So even though I'm Portuguese, I still came from Canada. You know, even that I'm born in Montreal, I have dual Portuguese citizenship and Canadian, but they saw me like a coach that came from a club in Canada. So right away from the start, I was hammered from behind. There was an article in the newspaper that really went at the directors of Palmeiras for hiring a Luso-Canadian, and he made fun of Canada playing hockey and things like that. So I felt already a lot of pressure getting in the job. And then every time we lost a game in the state championship, I felt this additional pressure. And in Brazil, they fire coaches at 13, 12, 17. There is this development that is going well in Brazil because of the talent, but it's also a pressure on the youth coaches. In Brazil, if you are the coach of youth of Palmeiras, Santos, Corinthians, Flamengo, São Paulo, you have to win. You have to win. The problem is only one wins. And you still have Grêmio, Inter of Porto Alegre, Cruzeiro, Fluminense, Botafogo, Vasco. So when you arrive at this Brazilian Cup, everybody could win it. And we ended up finishing first in our group. We beat Vitória of Bahia in the quarterfinals. We beat Curitiba in the semifinals, and the final was against Vasco da Gama. And I remember we won in penalty shot, and when the last penalty shot went in, just tears came, because even though it was a title that is not a professional one because it's at the youth level, it was the one that I felt more pressure from outside.
Yes, and still the same way in Brazil.
Yes, it is.
Presently, there is a huge evolution in MLS, and the United States, year after year, soccer is growing a lot. We are a huge country. Many people already say that we already beat Mexico. For example, 10 years ago, this was unthinkable. What do we need to play face to face with the best countries in the world?
We still have a lot of work to do. I think the MLS did an incredible job to get where they were. And that step missing for me was winning a CONCACAF Champions League, and Seattle winning last year, and even NYCFC winning the Campeones Cup. Now, every time an MLS team plays a Mexican team, it's a game. You don't know who's gonna qualify, you know, and the thing is, when that is not long ago. So not long ago, you would play Mexican teams, and you know that Mexican teams would qualify. And now, no. Now, if an MLS team knocks out an MLS team, a Mexican team, it's a normality. Nobody is shocked about it. Even if I think, for me, America today is probably the biggest or the strongest team in CONCACAF. We could still compete with everybody. And that was the step needed. And I think the next step, for me, it has to do a little bit with the salary cap that is very good for the league, but in other ways, if you want to better the roster, if you want to better the team, there's challenges that the salary cap gives. Very good for the league, but also makes it difficult to go to that next step and be very close to the best teams in the world, right? But I think that, look, when you go, not long ago, a lot of the stadiums had football lines. A lot of the stadiums were not soccer specific. And now suddenly when you see the stadium of Cincinnati, Columbus, LAFC, Austin, you say, wow, this league is really growing. You go to stadiums where you have experiences in MLS similar to what you see in all over the world, you know. So that's a big step from the league, and I think they're in the right direction to keep on growing.
How important for the development of the MLS have players like Gareth Bale, Chiellini, Beckham, Thierry Henry?
Yeah, there's no doubt that those are all players that give an image to the league. You know, the people that didn't know the league as much. Oh, Beckham Galaxy, even when Pirlo or Villa went to NYCFC, Vela to LAFC, Ibrahimovic to the Galaxy, Thierry Henry to Montreal, it really started to give exposure more to the league. But I think a lot of years ago, the league was seen as older players going to retire. No, now we have a little bit of both. We do still have older players that come and to play to win, but we also are able to attract young players and allow them to see the MLS as a league that could be a step or a bridge towards an higher league. And you saw the example of a player like Almiron, that went from Argentina to Atlanta, Newcastle, or Afonso Davis from the Whitecaps to Bayern Munich. More and more, I think you're gonna see players using the MLS as a bridge towards better leagues.
Competitions like MLS Next or MLS Next Pro came to help the development of the young players. I personally have seen several games, and our development, it's huge.
Yeah, it was a layer that was missing, in my opinion, in MLS. You had a lot of teams that their second team or USL teams, where USL teams, everybody focuses only to win. The majority of the coaches play their older players because they want to win. That young player on loan from New England or on loan from LA Galaxy didn't have the minutes necessary. What players need when they're in that bracket of the 17 to 20 years old, those 3 years, they need to play. They need to play. And many times, the very good ones at 18, they were already in the first team. Then the ones not making and they were being on loan, sometimes they had very limited minutes because the USL coaches wanted to win and again play their older players to win. Now this MLS Next Pro allows that age group to play, to develop, to become better. And that was the missing, in my opinion, the missing gap to see players develop. And I think there's a lot of players that today we don't know their names very well, that in the years to come, you're gonna see some of the names in MLS and you're gonna say, wow, this guy's a good player. Where was he? Oh, he spent 2 years in the MLS Next Pro or 1 year in MLS Next Pro. And that is necessary, you know.
Yeah, that's right. I remember watching Tyler Adams, the first games with New York Red Bull. his growth was enormous in such a short time. It's possible we can see more players like Adams frequently in Premier League, for example.
I think so, yeah. As when you see the league evolving the way it is in MLS, and the slowly the respect is gaining from other leagues in the world. I have GMs or sporting directors from Europe and other places in the world calling me and asking me questions about MLS players. A lot of them are Portuguese working in clubs in Europe or in other places, and they take the phone and call me, look, Mark, you know this player from this club. That means that they're watching. That means that they're looking at it. And I think that's the first big step. So when you have now the attention of other countries and other GMs and things like that, you see Johnston Celtic, Kone Watford, you're gonna Mihailovic to Twente, you're gonna see that more and more. It's just the natural process of a league that is growing. So I do remember Tyler Adams in the USL Red Bull too, because I was in 2016, I coached Soul Park Rangers, and we lost the USL final against that Red Bull team that was excellent. They had also Aaron Long in it, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Tyler Adams, when I remember, I didn't know him very well, and I asked, how old is he? And they told me he just turned 17. I was very, very impressed. I remember that year, the year after, I went to San Francisco to coach the San Francisco Deltas, and I called Jesse Marsh and I asked him, hey, this kid Tyler Adams, if you're not gonna play him much because he was with the second team, can I have him on loan? He's gonna play in the NASL. You could call him back at any moment. And I remember Jesse told me, Mark, he's gonna play every minute for me, I think. So right there, I saw it right away. This kid has a great future.
Jesse March coaching Leeds United in the Premier League is an inspiration.
Of course, it's for every coach that works in North America, they see that not only what's going on with players, it could happen with coaches. The bigger the league grows, the more respected, it markets everybody. It markets players, it markets coaches. So of course it brings a lot of opportunities, and also interest of coaches from outside that want to come to MLS. That's happening a lot. That's happening a lot too.
Yes, that's right. I know a couple Portuguese coaches that they want to come to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any inspiration as a coach?
When I started, my first UEFA badges, my first I would say my first internship that I was in Boa Vista. Then I went to Porto. It was in the years of Jose Mourinho at Porto. So 2003, 2004, then him going to Chelsea. So because of tactical periodization, because of the methodology, because of the influence he was having, and the first maybe Portuguese coach to really create an impact outside of Portugal, I would say that he was my first inspiration as a manager. Then while I started to coach and grow and develop my idea of play, I felt that many have impacted me, from Tony Dungy, that was a Indianapolis Colts NFL coach, to Klopp, to Sarri. Then it's an evolution as a coach. But I would say the first big main one was Jose Mourinho.
What is your biggest goal for your career?
When I started, my dreams were here. And then when I started to learn about the business of the game, my biggest objective is to be really happy where I am, and allow things to come towards you instead of you looking for things. When you're always chasing for something, I feel it brings doesn't bring happiness. When you're in a place where you're working at the best of your ability and you're every day you're faithful in what you do and how you work, things come towards you, and opportunity comes towards you. And that's what I look for in my life. So to tell you that in 2 years I want to be here, or in 4 years I want to be there, I don't do those plans, because in football the things are way too dynamic. The things change like this, like this. If you tell me when I was let go of Vancouver in August 27 last 2021, if you would have told me in September last year you're gonna win the MLS Cup next year, impossible. The moment I was in, and suddenly like this, 2022 was a fantastic year for me. I finished the pro license. For me individually, I finished the UEFA pro license. We won the Supporter Shield. We won the MLS Cup. I worked with fantastic players. I learned with fantastic players. So I things in football change like this. So to be planning in 4 years, 5 years, I don't know. I want to be the best I can today.
Okay, to finish, let's play just a little game. I'm
Okay.
going to give you always two choices.
Okay.
You must choose the one that you identify with more, without
Okay.
thinking too much. All right. So
Yeah.
it's 6 questions, two options: Ronaldo or Messi,
Ronaldo.
USA or Canada,
Canada.
Champions League or World Cup,
Champions League.
Portugal national team head coach or Canada,
Portugal.
Jose Mourinho or Bob Bradley,
Jose Mourinho.
Argentina or France. Who's going to win the World Cup?
France.
Thank you, Mark. I hope one day reach your level as a coach. I wish you the great season for the next season. And I promise you that I will go see LFC next year.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Nice speaking to you.
Take care, Mark. All right.
Take care. Nice speaking to you. Obrigado.